This week's parsha is Parshas Chukas. Parshas Chukas discusses in the beginning the laws of the Parah Aduma. When one becomes tameh, spiritually contaminated, the only means to decontaminate oneself, to purify oneself, is through the Parah Aduma, the red heifer, which is basically they take a red heifer, which is a type of cow, they burn it down to ashes and mix it with special water. Afterwards, that water is then sprinkled on the person who became spiritually contaminated, and he is now pure. The very first Rashi in this week's parsha discusses why the Torah labels this mitzvah, the mitzvah of Parah Aduma, as a chayk, chukah. What's a chayk? Chayk is a type of law, and typically a chayk is when it seems that there is no reason. God decreed it. It's a decree. It is my decree that you fulfill this. No asking why. Now, Rashi on the spot says that the reason why it's called a chukah is because the Satan, the evil inclination, and also the nations of the world will taunt the Jews about this mitzvah and say, why are you doing this? It makes no sense. And therefore, Rashi says it's called a chayk. It's a decree. Now, if you think for a second about Rashi, what he's saying, what does that mean? So, if they come over to me, people who will mock this mitzvah, they'll say this makes no sense, then I'll answer them what? It's a decree? Will that satisfy them? It has no reason. You're right, and I'm still doing it. So why is that a satisfactory answer to their question? How will that in any way make them or me feel any better about it? Because they're right. It has no reason. I'm still doing it. So the Sfas Emes, the first Ger Rebbe, explains like this. He says a chayk does not mean there is no reason. What it means is that it's a reason which is inaccessible to us at this point. How do we make that reason accessible to us? How do we get to that understanding of what I'm doing? Why am I doing it? What am I accomplishing by this Parah Aduma, by this red heifer? The way I get to that is by accepting the commandment upon myself, by doing it. And then I come to a new understanding of the mitzvah. What does this mean? To explain, I think a very mundane example is in order. Many people hate dry red wine. They can't understand it. To them, it tastes like nothing. There's no sugar. It's sour. It's thick. It scratches your throat. But then, a person develops a taste for it. He decides to train his palate to appreciate it. And through that, he now becomes a person who appreciates dry wine. What changed? What changed is that he experienced it. And that's the same thing with Parah Aduma, with the red heifer. That a person has to experience the mitzvah, has to raise himself, to elevate himself through the mitzvah, and there he comes to a greater understanding. We as Jews understand that wisdom comes from God, meaning that it's not only what my brain activity can produce. Many things that we get, knowledge that we get throughout our lives, is given from God. It's a gift from God. This is one of the major principles that we find in Mishle, in Proverbs, that Chachma, wisdom, is God-given. Of course, there are other types of understanding and discerning and so on. That's our own job to further that wisdom, but much of what we have is given from God. So in order for us to understand the Parah Aduma, we must engage in it, accept it, and thereby we will now understand it. And that's what it means in Rashi when it says that when the nations of the world will say, why you're doing this, it has no reason, we won't be able to explain it to them, but we as Jews will understand it. Now, this week's Parsha question is very simple. What is that understanding? Since we as Jews understand the Parah Aduma, what is the secret behind the Parah Aduma? What is the reason why, like our rabbis say, that it purifies those who are contaminated, but the person who engages in the process of creating the para aduma, the concoction which purifies, he himself becomes contaminated by that process. Have a great Shabbos.